period the 1st of April to the 30th of February. So it's paying right at the end of the period, which has caused many people a lot of problems that they've been waiting for up to 5 months for this money. And the average that they talk about, average trading profits, is based on those 4 tax years, 2016-17, 2017-18, 2018-19, and 2019-20, an average over those. Unless you had a gap where you had a year with no self-employment income, in which case it is only the most recent years with self-employment income. Now, you can understand why it's good news for all those people who hadn't done a 2019-20 tax return, or who had done a 2019-20 tax return, but it didn't count before. But why is it bad news? Okay, I'm asking myself the question, but I'm quite interested in this, so forgive me, I'm just going to carry on.
No, man.
That's because the change that was needed to include 600,000 new starters, and I was one of the people lobbying for that, does shift the maths slightly because of the inclusion of the new year. So if you had bigger earnings in that year, that could mean a bigger payout, but equally it could push you over the £50,000 average. And because that is a hard cliffhanger, i.e. earn £50,000 and a penny, you get nothing, earn £49,999 and you get the full grant, if it just pushed you over that threshold, then you're going to lose out, leaving you ineligible. Lower earnings, of course, in that 2019-20 tax year than you had in previous years will reduce your payout, but equally, if it reduces your income by so much and you had more non-self-employment income that's now over 50%, it could leave you ineligible. So I think there will be some people who had got grants before who won't get this time, but there are more people who didn't get grants before who will get it this time. I hope that explains it. And of course, to do this, you have to declare a significant reduction in profits due to COVID.
Richard Stenning has texted in, Martin, saying, I have claimed last 3 cease grants because my profits were severely affected. I now have a new job for the cease 4 period, which makes my profits higher than previous year for tax year 1920. Will I be penalised as I claimed first 3 payments legitimately?
Well, you certainly wouldn't be eligible for the 4th cease payment because you have to declare that your business was hit by COVID between the beginning of April and the beginning of February and the end of April. Clearly, if you're earning more than you were earning previously in past years, your business hasn't been hit, it's gained from it. So you've made that declaration. You can't make that declaration. You can't claim the 4th cease grant, and nor should you. Your business is going well. It's there to support people who've been hit by COVID. But if you honestly declared in the first 3 grants, and you will have that provably and accountably, that your profits were down due to COVID, and there was been slightly different declaration criteria for some of those earlier grants, so the phrasing is slightly different, but let's take the general principle. Was your business hit due to COVID? If it was, and you declared it, you will not be penalised at all, as long as that was an honest declaration. If you were playing the system and it wasn't an honest declaration, well then likely you would be penalised for it, but you're telling me it isn't, so you should be absolutely fine.
Richard, all good. Martin will come back and talk about more things, including some brilliant Tell Us responses. Martin, just a quick reminder, what do you want people to tell us this afternoon?
We want to find out what purchase you made that really helped you through lockdown. Small or big, exciting preferably, interesting stories definitely. I've talked about my chopper, my salad chopper, before anyone gets too worried. That really made a difference to me, and it was my golf net too, really helped, and some hair clippers. But what did you buy that you just went, I'd never have made it through without that? I'm so glad I bought it. We want the good stories, the happy stories, celebrating hopefully the last end of lockdown.
Perfect. OK, more with Martin Lewis after the news headlines at 32 minutes past 1 with James Wickham.
Listen on BBC Sounds. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Thanks, Nahar. Good afternoon. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has called the row over links between the Cameron government and the collapsed Greensill capital finance firm the tip of the iceberg. A vote on an opposition motion into a broader parliamentary inquiry into lobbying rules, asking if they're fit for purpose, will take place this afternoon. The government has told Conservative MPs to vote against it, but the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, told the Commons that it was not clear that the boundaries between the civil service and the private sector have been properly understood. The chief executive of the travel association ABTA has told MPs the price people have to pay to get tested for coronavirus is still too high and it's causing the industry problems. One UK supplier on the government's travel scheme, Randox, has cut the cost of a PCR test to £60, but Mark Tanzer said it would still put people off going on holiday. Scientists have welcomed the expansion of a major UK trial looking at whether different types of coronavirus vaccines can be mixed safely. People over the age of 50 who've received a first dose of either the Pfizer or Oxford AstraZeneca jab can apply to take part in the trial, which will now include the Moderna and Novavax vaccines. And Tesco has announced a sharp fall in profits despite an increase in sales. The costs of paying staff while they were self-isolating and shielding during the pandemic was part of the reason for profits falling by a fifth, even though sales rose by 7%. That's the news on 5 Live. Delith has the sport.
Afternoon, James. Erling Braut Haaland may be the most wanted footballer in Europe, but Borussia Dortmund chief executive Hans-Joachim Watzke has told BBC Sport that the club won't be forced into selling players at a cut price this summer. Despite Dortmund potentially missing out on qualifying for the Champions League next season, Watzke says, "We do not have to sell a player." Haaland and Jadon Sancho have both been linked with a number of clubs.
I get tired of this. Last summer, everybody in England, everybody in Europe, every journalist told the public Jadon Sancho will play for Manchester United or whether, but he's playing still at Borussia Dortmund.
Well, Manchester City take a 2-1 lead into their Champions League quarter-final second leg against Dortmund tonight. You can hear commentary on 5 Live. Sports Extra has coverage as Liverpool look to overturn a 2-goal deficit against Real Madrid at Anfield. Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta says the club are very close to agreeing a new contract with striker Folarin Balogun. Balogun has come through the Arsenal academy and is yet to make his Premier League debut, but with his contract due to expire at the end of the season, a number of clubs have shown interest in the 19-year-old.
First of all, I understand why he got to the point that he was really thinking about leaving the football club after being raised here, and the feelings that he has got towards the club, then try to explain what you want to do, how involved he's going to be in the project and how, and then get the full commitment from the club.
The double Olympic champion Helen Glover has told 5 Live that inspiring others is now her biggest motivation to carry on. Glover won a European rowing gold with Polly Swan on Sunday in her first competitive race in 5 years and first since having children. She says they can only get better.
Both Polly and I sat there thinking, I hope we get down the track, and that sounds really weird because we do it every day in training. But something about competition brings all those worries to head, and we've got to trust the training that we're doing. We're training hard every day. And having done that race now, next time we're sat on the start line, we'll be definitely much more confident.
Athletes are competing for places at next month's European Championship and this summer's Olympic Games at the British Swimming Selection Trials. Olympic champion Adam Peaty was amongst those in action in the pool this morning. John Hunt is at the London Aquatic Centre.
Adam Peaty's time of 57.70 was the 9th fastest of his career. To do that in a morning heat clearly indicates the Olympic and world champion is in wonderful shape 100 days out from Tokyo. Duncan Scott, like Peaty, already pre-selected for Tokyo, won his 200-metre individual medley in style, whilst tonight's women's 200-metre freestyle final should be a high-class affair, as both Freya Anderson and Abby Wood, two of the rising stars of the British team, looked in wonderful shape.
Coverage of day one of the trials resumes at 7 o'clock on 5 Live Sports Extra. And Novak Djokovic is through to the third round of the Monte Carlo Masters after beating Yannick Sinner in straight sets in what was his first match since winning the Australian Open. That's the latest from BBC Sport.
BBC Sounds.
This is Nas. I'm here to tell you about a fight that stopped the world in its tracks.
A duo that will have you hooked.
Virtually 100% of the black kids in my school supported Ali. Virtually 100% of the white kids supported Frazier.
In the Fight of the Century podcast, one of the most historic battles in boxing is brought to life.
People are calling out around me, stop the fight.
Then immerse yourself in the sounds of the times with a 60s-inspired soundtrack. Listen to the Fight of the Century podcast and music mix on the BBC Sounds app.
The voice of the UK. This is 5 Live.
Nahal Arthanaika. Listen live on digital, online, smart speaker, or the BBC Sounds app.
But more importantly than that, Martin Lewis is here with us right through until 2 o'clock. In about 17 minutes' time, I'm being told, Martin's Mastermind each week, where he asks me, and, you know, you as well, but mostly me to embarrass me, a question from the archives, or indeed incredibly topical. And
I think if we just clarify that statement, Nihal, I ask the question to everybody that the embarrassment is solely yours.
That's an important clarification, Martin. Yes, very important.
Aren't you glad I'm back?
Always, bro. Always. Best lockdown purchase. This question has really got people going. Because it's so positive as well. I love this one, Martin. Adrian from Bristol said, "Hi Nihal, I bought an airbrush kit to restore old toy cars from my childhood. How wonderful is that? And I also scratch-built an Eddie Van Halen electric guitar." I mean, Adrian from Bristol, he has owned lockdown. He has made it his own. Alison in Chelmsford said, "Best lockdown purchase, ordnance survey map. Old school, so you know you're actually on a public footpath when you're confused in the middle of farmland, and wellies have got me through." Alison in Chelmsford there, very practical. Very practical.
I've got one from Rachel Hare here. It's got a lovely picture you can't see. And she says, "Definitely the lockdown armchair that we bought last May. Not exotic, but it permanently faces out to catch those precious, much-needed mid-morning rays in our apartment. Always a race to get there first." Oh, I like that.
There's lots of these. Right, pasta maker. The longer I spend making food, the less time I can spend snacking. Plus, it's very soothing. It takes concentration, but not so much that you can't sing along to the radio. What radio? Surely not our radio. Liz Wiley on Facebook.
Oh, I've got one.
Go on.
I like this. Steve Cooper, and I'm going to read it in the tone I think it's written, which is slightly gritted teeth.
Okay.
"In the summer, it was the noise-cancelling headphones I bought, as a neighbour just drank and played loud music all afternoon with his mate." Yeah.
Wow.
I gave that the feeling, Steve, that you needed.
Yeah, 100%. Liz Wiley on Facebook, a hot tub. What? It was a luxury, but it's been my escape. We've had to shield and haven't been able to go out or see folk. I can lie in the tub and dream of better days to come. I can't hear the word hot tub now without thinking about that scene in Friday Night Dinner, and the boys come around the corner and their mum and dad, Mr. and Mrs. Goodman, are there in the hot tub, and them saying things like, "Was it having a bath in your own filth?" I believe is what they said to them. Let's speak now to who's got in contact with us. Let me find it. Richard in London. Hello, Richard in London.
Good afternoon. How are you guys?
We're well. So tell us all about it then. What have you bought in lockdown?
Oh, no, it was about something else. I wanted to ask a question.
Ask a question away then. Go on, ask a question. Sorry about that.
Well, unless you tell us what you bought in lockdown, I'm not sure we'll allow it. Come on, you've got to have bought something. I don't care what it is.
Well
think on your feet.
I've sponsored the player of my local team. I wouldn't have bought a season ticket off, but...
You sponsored a player?
Yeah, I'm a Leighton Orient fan, and sponsored one of the players there.
So what does that mean? How does that work?
Good on you, sir.
Have you got your name on his back now instead of his own name?
No, he's not that stupid.
Come on, he owes.
Yeah, I'm... funny enough, we've got one... Harry Kane started his career with us, so
he did.
You owe us one for Harry Kane, I think.
Absolutely do. Tell me though, what do you get for this sponsorship then, Richard?
I get the name in the programme, and I get the player's shirt at the end of the season. So,
I presume it's like sponsoring an animal at the zoo. You know you're helping. Clubs were struggling. You put your money there as a long-time supporter, as a little bit of showing some loyalty. Good on you, mate.
Yeah, good on you. Do you mind me asking, how much does it cost to sponsor a Leighton Orient player?
Well, the guy that I sponsored it was for half season for this year, because he signed in the January window. I think included, it's a guess just off my memory here, because my memory's a bit rubbish. I think it cost me about £240, including VAT. So
this isn't a facetious question, Richard, but is Leighton Orient by any chance a registered charity?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
So there's no tax relief on this, is there?
No, not that I'm aware of. I did it for the love of my football team. So I know. I'm sure you guys would appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Great.
Well,
question,
love at your football team, love at your local community as well, isn't it? Because football teams are often at the heart of that,
especially
keeping everything
Leighton
going.
Orient,
So,
yeah.
it's not why you called up, but great answer.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Well done, Martin,
and on top
for
of that
getting
as
out.
well, if the player in question ever becomes as famous as Harry Kane ever becomes, the shirt might be worth a few pounds in later years.
Yeah, more than 240 quid, I can imagine.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, Richard, sorry that we've taken you on a tangent. What is it that you actually called in to speak to Martin about?
It was just a question because I booked I know it's probably off the topic that I've been listening to in the last half an hour, but I'm looking to go away in September, and a friend of mine who's a travel agent booked I'm taking my mum away, and he's booked the flights. I paid for the flights already, and the rest of it would be due in September, I believe, early September. But I know with a particular airline in question, they've been known to be a little bit lax, shall we say, if flights are cancelled with a COVID thing. So I was just wondering what my position would be should there be problems come the end of September with a flight.
If your flights are cancelled, then you have an absolute right to a refund of the money.
Yeah.
If they were cancelled and it was the airline's fault, you're also entitled to compensation. But we'll assume it's a COVID-based cancellation, so you're only entitled to the money back. And hopefully, if it's an airline that's still solvent now, it should be able to do that. Now, you may decide that you'll just take vouchers, which is often easier, but you're entitled to a full refund. What's more difficult is when they keep the flight going, even though you're not allowed to travel. That's the more difficult scenario, which is the tactic some have been using. Because in that case, you're under the EU regulations that have now been ported into UK law that cover this, you're not entitled to an automatic refund. In that case, under the fact you bought it through a travel agent, depending on the structure of that, may mean that you get the atoll protection and that they're entitled to give you the money back. If not, the Competition and Markets Authority says that if you can't travel due to COVID and due to COVID restrictions in your area, you should get a refund, but that hasn't yet been tested in court. So if the flight's cancelled, you should get a refund. Yeah, I mean, it can be difficult to push them to get the money back, and you would want your travel agent to do that, and then your travel agent has to give you the money back. It isn't that easy. Your travel insurance almost certainly wouldn't cover you for a COVID cancellation. If it was structural, if it was you who had COVID, it may do, but if it was your area was in lockdown, then it wouldn't do. I mean, that's the slight risk that you take at the moment, if I'm being really honest. It should be fine, but it's not 100%.
I mean, I'm quite fortunate that both me and my mum have both been vaccinated and, had the first vaccine. And, I mean, I think my mum's due in a couple of weeks for the second one, and I've got mine at the end of May. So, I mean, in that aspect, with the testing thing and all of that, I mean, you should technically be covered without a lockdown. But I was just making sure that with these, shall we say, cheaper airlines, they sometimes can be a little bit funny.
What I can't give you at the moment is certainty. We can certainly hope that by September it'll be better. You and your mum have been vaccinated. That certainly makes it easier to travel, and going forward, while there's much debate over vaccine passports in the UK, it's very likely that some form of COVID certification system will be in play for overseas travel because other countries will be requiring it. I was just reading the situation. Israel, which is one of the first vaccinated countries or fully vaccinated countries, is currently saying that what it will expect is a test before you go, a test on arrival, and an antibody test, because it won't be taking vaccine passports to check that if you say you've had a vaccine, that you've actually got antibodies for COVID. So we're going to see that type of testing going forward. You're obviously ahead of the game because you and your mum have been vaccinated. Hopefully by September things will be much better. But of course there could be lockdowns of borders and the inability to travel if cases are bad elsewhere, even if they're good here. And I'm presuming it's you going. If it's a low-cost airline,
Italy.
then I presume it's just a European short haul, Italy. I mean, we have to cross our fingers. I can't give you certainty. In normal times, you should get your money back, no problem. These aren't normal times. I still think you should get your money back, but I'm not going to add the no problem on the end.
Fair enough. All right, well, thanks for that.
No worries.
And just to say, I always look forward to this show on a Wednesday afternoon. It's always entertaining, listen, and informative. So,
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Mate, if you like this, you'd love the Mondays, Tuesdays and Thursdays as well. Absolutely, absolutely. All over the shop we are. Brilliant. Richard, thank you. John in Liverpool is here for a question for you, Martin. John, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm good, my friend. Thanks for getting in contact with us. Martin is here for you, John.
Hi, Martin. Yeah, just I've got a 20-year-old daughter who's, with what's going on, is potentially changing direction but doesn't exactly know. She packed in university. To be fair, she read the situation last year and thought it wouldn't be the same experience as it was. Took an open university course, but then the open university finance people messed that up, so she got kicked off that course. And so she is probably going to go back to university either this September or next. She's got a job, but credit to her, she's asking me, because I've probably nagged her all my life, but she's asking me what's the best way for her to approach the pension market and get herself starting to invest.
Well, she's got an employer at the moment.
Yes, she's working, yeah.
And how old is she? She's 20.
She'll be 21 next month.
Okay, so currently her employer does not have to auto-enroll her. Now, auto-enrollment is where some of your money is automatically saved into a pension from your salary each month, and the employer has to contribute as well. So it doesn't have to auto-enroll her because she's under 22. I'm presuming she earns over around $7,000-ish a year.
Yeah. She's on.
Fine.
She works in a pub full time. So.
Okay, fine. So on that basis, as an employee, she actually, even though she isn't auto-enrolled, she has a right to opt in to the auto-enrollment scheme, even though she's under 22, because she's earning enough and she can't be refused, and she should get the contributions as well. So absolutely, in the first instance, while she's still working from the employer, and nothing will beat that. Nothing will beat the tax relief she gets putting money into a pension and matching from her employer. So the first thing to do is she should be signing up to the company pension. She should be saying, I want to opt in. It's bizarre. It's auto-enrollment, but she has to do manual enrollment because of her age. But she wants to enroll into the company pension scheme, and they should be giving her contributions. Now, look, there might be a wobble if it's a one-off pub and that they're struggling at the moment due to COVID. It might be more difficult.
No, they're not. To be fair, they're not. There's a very privileged position she's in, so, from that sense.
So it's great. Well, then definitely, I would suggest what she wants to be doing is looking at that. And that would be first instance. Now, once she finishes and she goes back to uni, obviously she won't be working there. She won't have that. Well, then she could look, I don't know what pension scheme they're using, because it could be the Nest one, it could be any other. She could also look at a very simple stakeholder pension. If you're both pretty sophisticated financially, she could go for something like a self-invested personal pension, which is basically where you choose your own investments within a pension wrapper. Pension is just a tax-free wrapper. It's just a way to save towards retirement from your gross, not your net. You know what I'm talking about. So those, I would say, in first instance, sign up as quick as she can to the company pension scheme. She should be eligible for their contributions.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All good. John in Liverpool. Okay, let's speak to William, who's in London. Good afternoon, William.
Hello, Nihal, Martin. Great show, Martin.
Hello.
Nihal. Yeah. Question.
Go on, Mark. Go on, William.
Have you had the question? All right. Yeah, so I came into a bit of money after my stepfather passed away. And we do need a new car. And my question was whether we should get it on finance or buy outright and do something else with the money.
Well, there's quite a lot in that question. If we take this on a like-for-like basis, you can't do much with the money in safety at the moment. You know, you're going to earn 0.5% interest at best if you save the money. You could, of course, take a risk with the money, but that wouldn't really help you. So the advantage of keeping the money and getting some borrowing doesn't really help. that much. If you look at car finance, now what we could say is if you were able to get a 0% finance deal, then technically it would be worth keeping the money in your bank account, saving it at the highest interest rate you got. It's what's called stoozing, and you're effectively earning a bit of money on the money that the car finance company is lending you. But you probably can't get a 0% deal. There are other complicated deals where you talk about the balloon payment and how much money is left at the end of it. But overwhelmingly, my instinct is if you've got the cash, use the cash, because what that can also enable you to do, if they're not giving you a finance deal, and sometimes dealers subsidise the finance deals by charging you more on the cost of the car, is negotiate a better deal on the car purchase outright. So as long as you do your negotiations right, I presume you're not getting a brand new car. As long as you do your negotiations right, and you bring the price down as much as you can, I mean, it's always better not to have a debt if you cannot have a debt. You might look at the leasing market, and that might be a better option for you, not because of the cost of the money, but because of the responsibility for the car. But as a general rule, if you don't need to borrow and you've got the cash and you don't want to take a risk, you're better to use the cash.
Well, that's appreciated, Martin. Thanks very much.
There you go.
It's not hard and fast, but certainly instinctively that's the safer route.
Might it be an idea to... my wife's still got some mortgage outstanding on her house. The house, would it be, if it was in her name, might it be an idea to help pay that off with and get going finance?
Well, again, you have to contrast the rates. It's a very simple. Paying money off the mortgage is equivalent to saving at the mortgage rate. So if you've got a 3% mortgage and you're allowed to overpay it without penalty, that is better than any saving account on the market. And also that's secured, but then you've got to look at the cost of the car finance. Now, if it were a straight personal loan and you could get a 2.8% personal loan and pay off a 3% mortgage, and 2.8 is the cheapest on the market, then you are just slightly on a winner on that basis, although it is another creditor that you've got to your name. If you're comparing it to the other form of car finance out there, there's just no like-for-like comparison you can do. You just can't do that calculation, so it's more difficult. But certainly, I mean, if she's got a high-rate mortgage, if it's a mortgage is 5 or 6%, then I'd definitely look at clearing the mortgage. If it's a cheap mortgage in 1 or 2%, I'd probably just carry on as you are and not get a car loan, because that would likely be more expensive.
Cool, I'll look into it. Many thanks.
No worries. Absolute pleasure. Cheers, William. Okay, it's time for this. Now, this is the part of the show, Martin's Mastermind, where he asks all of us a question, but only embarrasses me by having to find out the answer. Right, so today, what is the question, Martin Lewis?
Okay, so Nihal, you've decided to celebrate the fact that you can eat out again. You're going to go to your favourite pizza restaurant where they have the Nihal special, which everybody knows is a pepperami, tuna, pineapple, garlic, white pizza with truffled anchovies. Lo and behold, they have 2 deals on this week. They will give you 2 10-inch pizzas for £15, or 1 15-inch pizza for £15. These are exactly the same pizza, same thickness, everything's the same. So what I want to know is, now you've been doing this show, you should be a top money saver. Which is the best pizza deal for the 15 quid? Should you get 1 15-inch pizza, 2 10-inch pizzas, or are they both the same and it doesn't matter? Over to you.
Well, purely in terms of massive pizza, 2 times 10-inch pizza for 15 quid. More than 1 15-inch pizza.
You need to get the question out of your voice. I'm not here to help you, I'm just here to listen.
I'm processing out loud. So I would go with, but the thing is about you, Martin, you trickster, you slippery customer, you, is that the thing that looks most obvious may not be the most obvious, but yet you may be double bluffing me. And it may well be the most obvious. So I'm going with 2 times 10-inch pizzas for £15.
Well, the score before today was Martin 5, Nihal 3. The score is now Nihal 3, Martin 6. So let's just do this. Do you remember school mathematics? What is the area of a circle? The area of a circle, pi r squared, pizza pie in this case. So we can forget the pi though, because we just want to look at relative area. So what you can work the relative area on is squaring it. First of all, what is 10 squared, Nihal? I know you can do that.
100.
2 times 100.
200.
So the area of that pizza is 200. We'll ignore pi. What's 15 squared? Shall I help you with that one?
Yes. Yes.
225.
There you go.
So you get 225 on the 15. You get 225 on the 15. 2 times 10 squared is 200. You get more pizza on 115. Interestingly, if it was a stuffed crust and you really like the stuffed crust, you'd just be using pi d, pi times the diameter, or 2 pi times the radius, and therefore you would get more crust on 2 10-inch than 1 15-inch. So if you're into stuffed crust, I didn't say it was stuffed crust though, that would have been the winner. So Nihal, it's 6-3 to me, a bit of pizza maths. Finally, you can use pi r squared, people. You can use pi r squared for something practical. You learnt it in school, you asked why, now you know. It's when you go to a pizza restaurant, you can work out the best pizza. Simply square the size of the pizza and use that to contrast to see the relative pricing.
Can you do £1 MOTs in 30 seconds?
I can. Halfords, if you go into Halfords or go online in Halfords until Monday and buy anything, you get a voucher to you, which you have to use by the end of May for an MOT up to November. We're free with any purchase. You can buy a £1 sponge online, it gets you a free MOT, but only use it if you think your car won't need too many repairs, otherwise use a local council MOT centre.
Perfect.
Over and out.
Can I just say, the answer to that question actually came from Douglas McFarlane, who's just tweeted me saying, neither pizza, as they have pineapple on them. And I agree with that 100%, Martin Lewis. No pineapple ever on a pizza. Good to see you, mate. Good to have you back.
Take care.
The voice of the UK. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 2 o'clock. This is Lisa Costello. Denmark has announced it's stopping the use of the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine entirely due to a possible link to very rare blood clots. It's the first country in Europe to take such action after a number raised concerns. Health officials in the UK insist the jab is safe, although the medicines regulator has recommended that adults under 30 should be offered an alternative if possible. A study of the Pfizer and Oxford-AstraZeneca COVID vaccines has found that both produce a strong immune response in people over the age of 80. Researchers at Birmingham University analysed blood samples 5 weeks after a single dose and said the Oxford jab performed slightly better in one area. Our science correspondent Palab Ghosh explains.
The study backs the clinical evidence, which shows that both vaccines have greatly reduced deaths and hospitalisations. There was some concern that because older people have weaker immune systems, their protection from vaccines would be reduced. And there were also worries about extending the time of the second dose from 3 or 4 weeks up to 12 weeks. The results show that both vaccines were highly effective after 5 weeks in the over 80s. Antibodies to fight off COVID infection were found in 93% of those receiving the Pfizer jab. For AstraZeneca, it was 87%.
Travel industry leaders have warned that £60 is still too much for a coronavirus PCR test after one of the UK's leading providers reduced its price. Under plans to restart foreign travel from England next month, even passengers from the safest green list countries will have to test negative when they return using a PCR swab. MPs have also questioned why similar tests are cheaper overseas. Boris Johnson has admitted it's not clear whether the boundaries between Whitehall and business have been properly understood in the growing row surrounding David Cameron and lobbying. Labour wants the government to hold a full parliamentary inquiry into lobbying, describing it as a broken system. Sir Oliver Letwin, who served in Mr Cameron's cabinet, says the rules should be reassessed.
I do think that there are issues here about the way that government operates. There is ample evidence from what's happened that there's a gap between the current law about what people can do by way of lobbying once they've left office and the public perception of what's appropriate.
A gang who stole more than £160,000 worth of items from supermarkets across the country has been jailed. The 6 men would set off alarms to distract security guards while they carried out the shoplifting. Nick Garnett reports.
The gang targeted high-value items such as perfume, cosmetics, alcohol, printer cartridges and thousands of babies' nappies. Police said they'd carried out more than 80 separate offences across the country before they were caught. Each of the 6 men, who were originally from Romania, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to steal charges at Chester Crown Court. They tended to pick on Asda's shops, setting off security alarms in one part of the store while they carried out the thefts in another, but detectives managed to trace a car and credit card to a house in Oldham, where some of the stolen items were found.
BBC News, it's 2:03.
Wagwan, it's your boy Big Nasty. I'm here to tell you about a new podcast. 40 years ago in my hometown Brixton, it was burning. There was a full-on riot.
This morning, the people of Brixton in South London are counting the cost of a weekend of violence.
This was devastation.
I could see it in people's eyes, the anger.
There was no going back.
The police were absolutely on the offensive.
This thing wasn't just about one weekend of chaos. It ran much deeper than that.
We was waiting for the match to be lit.
This is a story of why it happened. Brixton, flames on the front line. Out now on BBC Sounds.
BBC Radio 5 Live.
I listen every day.
I trust the presenters.
There are lots of people calling us tonight. Bowls to Stokes, who hammers it for 4!
The voice of the UK, Nahal Arthur-Naika. BBC Radio 5 Live.
Thank you for all of the messages that you sent in about the things that you bought that gave you joy during lockdown, those random purchases that perhaps if you didn't have so much time to yourselves, you wouldn't, and maybe saved a couple of quid, you wouldn't have bought. But big shout out to Gary Sutton, who said, I bought a soda stream, used it several times a day for sparkling water. Hashtag 80s child. Soda stream. You have to be a certain age to even know that reference. Wow. Sylvia, Brecken Therapy on Twitter, said carnivorous plants, always had an interest in them, so started to get them when we went into lockdown. Really helped to go and mess with them in between working with clients online. Suzanne in Wigan said, I got a hammock, which greatly helped my ability to relax and have a change of scenery when working from home. I've been known to get on it in a sleeping bag in the middle of winter and watch the stars. Wow. Wish I'd bought one sooner. From Susan in Wigan. Nihal, it's all about the air fryer. Okay, Matt in Denby Dale. It is all about the air fryer. This is one thing I've been looking into. Has to be said. That, and if anyone has a robot vacuum cleaner, can you tell me if that works? If it's a good thing? If it's worth getting? Because I've been thinking, I just don't want to hoover ever again. And if there is something that means that I can spend more time not doing that, then I'm all about it. So Matt in Denby Dale, he's bought an air fryer. A lot of people will doubt they have worktop space, but the truth is it makes life about 8% better. How do you calculate that something has made your life 8% better? iPads to help with homeschooling, a second-hand laptop, as 2 of us now work from home, joggers, and a loft conversion, because, adds a bit of excitement. The joggers have added a new comfort level. That's from Terry. Thanks for tweeting us that, Terry. My lime green ergonomic padded office chair, worth every penny. Anna in London's purchase during lockdown. Penny Walker, a broadband upgrade. I mean, I get it, and it's important, but it's not up there with the soda stream, is it? New to me, free and second-hand shed for my allotment so I can take shelter and make a nice brew during my hours spent at the plot this year. Okay, so that's you telling me some of the things that you have bought during lockdown. It would seem remiss of me not to ask my next guest, Claire Balding, what purchases that Claire has made during lockdown that have enhanced her life, something that if we hadn't been in lockdown and all sporting events hadn't been cancelled, which is basically what happened over the last 12 months, she would never have bought. Claire, hello, welcome to the show.
Hello, Nihal. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
That's great to have you.
What have I bought? Candles. I got a bit keen on ordering candles online at expensive candles at a discount.
Right.
Love a discount and golf gear.
Oh, in preparation. Have you ever played with Naga golf?
Yes, I have. Naga and I played together, in fact, on a winning team with Rachel Brown-Finnis. We played in a Pro-Am. Tommy Fleetwood's Pro. I could go on. I could really bore you here.
No, because I know she's obsessed with golf, isn't she?
She is a really good golfer. I am a very average golfer who occasionally hits a good shot. Naga's a proper, I say, really good golfer.
Okay, so you in preparation for golf courses opening again, you got involved. Has your wife bought you anything? Have you bought your wife anything during lockdown?
She bought me anything. Well, I had a birthday in lockdown.
Oh yeah.
So I had and I have, obviously everyone has now.
Yes.
In one way or another, haven't they?
Exactly.
Have we bought each? I sort of claim that I'm buying. Oh, I'll buy you a really nice, candle or room spray or quite a lot of, I just think that you want things to look nice, but also you just want things to smell nice. And when you're at home a lot, it sounds like my house stinks. It doesn't. It smells really nice because we've got a lot of diffusers and candles. So that really a bit boring.
Okay. So then, in terms of the home, how many dogs do you have?
None now.
Really? Since when?
Yeah, because Archie had to be put down last summer, and that was unfortunately
How old was Archie?
He was 15 and a half.
Oh, that's
so
a good innings.
It is a good innings, and he just got, they when they start to go downhill, I think generally with dogs it happens quite quickly,
yes.
and particularly as the aging scale is not just times 7 years. I think it accelerates as they get older, so it's sort of more than 7 years for every 1 year. And he got to a stage where he didn't even want to go out for a walk, poor boy. But on the joyful side, because if I talk any more about that, I will cry. Yeah. And lots of people I know. Have been in. I think we're all so close to our pets, and particularly in lockdown.
We lost ours in February last year.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, after 14 and a half years. So, but interestingly, my wife was initially clear, saying, "That's it. I can't deal with this grief. I'm not going to get another dog." And then about 2 days later, she was like, I need to have it. Not to disrespect our, Luna, our previous Staffy, but she really. So now we've got a year-old Staffordshire Bull Terrier again. In that house.
That's lovely, and I do think, my dad's always said the thing about animals generally is you're not replacing the animal, but you're filling the hole, and you don't have to live with that hole, and that's something you can't do with people, but you can do with animals. We haven't yet got another dog. I'm slightly conscious that I think we might be able to borrow from others who don't necessarily have as much time once lockdown's over. But also we have got a cat and a kitten. So our cat had kittens last summer, and born at home. Oh my God, it was extraordinary. It was one of the scariest
summer. This kind of strange cycle of life and death.
Yeah, absolutely. But Eric is the kitten who we've kept, and Eric is probably quite small brain, but he's really, really sweet, and he thinks he's a dog, and he keeps rolling on his back and asking for his tummy to be tickled, which cats are not meant to do. And he likes to jump on the desk when I'm writing, so I should put him on as a co-author actually, because I'm pretty sure some sentences were typed by him.
What is Eric's relationship with curtains like?
Oh, he doesn't jump or climb anything. Oh. He's not very athletic.
Wow.
No, so he hasn't destroyed any furnishings. But he sounds like an elephant. Honestly, when he's running up down the stairs, I'm like, how can one cat be that noisy? And I quite often think it's both of them, and then I realise it's not, it's just him. He just sounds like two cats, but Button's lying downstairs going, well, what's he up to?
What does a cat bring to a house that a dog doesn't? What's the difference between them? Because people say often, I'm a cat person, I'm a dog, but it is possible to be both.
Well, I'm trying to prove it's possible to be both. It's quite hard to convince my family of that, who are all, appalled that I don't have a dog at the moment and seem to be liking cats. I mean, like, what has happened to her? But yeah, they're very independent and they don't need walking. So there's two big differences.
True. Well, you're staff, aren't you? That's what they say.
You're staff to them, exactly. Yeah. And you can leave food for them and they'll just graze at it through the day, which definitely doesn't happen with dogs.
No, they don't. They'll eat their own body weight every hour. If they can, can't they? I mean, they just keep going. This is a lovely book that you've written for kids, Claire. It's called Fall Off, Get Back On, Keep Going. I just wonder, what are the most important elements of this book that you would have told your 11-year-old self? You would have picked out this book and go, I need this the most.
I think there's quite a bit in there about courage. I think, and that is courage not to follow the pack necessarily. I think also what I was very keen to try and explore was that, you know how kids are always told to be kind, lots of messages, be kind. What does that mean? What is kindness? So there's a chapter in there called The Cake of Kindness. If you were making it as ingredients, what would you put in? Because it's not just about supporting someone, and I do think that's a huge part of being kind. I also think it's about listening, it's about concentrating, it's about focusing on someone else, it's about offering to share. Now obviously that's one of the, I think most people do know that, but I think it's share your, not just things, I think it's more than just about things. There's a chapter about speaking up, and Greta Thunberg obviously is a great example of that to kids, because it's somebody they can see did it from a very young age. But those moments, and you'll have been in these situations as I have been, where you've heard something said to someone else and you're thinking, I really want to support them, but I don't know how. So sort of, thinking ahead, what would I say in a given situation? What do I wish I said when I heard that? How do you try and correct things that you think are wrong without getting into, unnecessary fights? So there's that. And I think I'd have said to myself, I was quite good at taking risks. So that element of it, and the whole title, Fall Off, Get Back On, Keep Going, is because my dad used to say to me, you've got to fall off 100 times to be a proper jockey. So I was always falling off on purpose. So that element, I think, I was always quite keen to prove that I was brave, because I knew that was something my parents really valued and, thought was important. And I was sort of battling that idea that you girls can't be brave. So I was then probably over brave. But I'm glad of that. I don't think that's a bad quality. But I think you can be very critical of yourself and of others then when they are brave and something goes wrong. So really it's that as well. It's talking to kids. And I did it because I visited a lot of schools when I was writing the series of 3 fiction novels that are based around the racehorse, starting with the racehorse Who Wouldn't Gallop. And kids are really interesting when you ask them questions of what they were in, what they thought was what they valued in their friends. And then I'd say, but can you see that in yourself? So when you talk about what do you love about your best friend? And they'll talk about, they're really kind, they're really supportive, they make me laugh. They're always there for me. And I said, well, those are the things that matter in you as well as in your friend. So how are you a good friend to them? It's not about, having the coolest clothes or the latest, the latest thing. It's about who you are. And so that's, hopefully that's something. And then you do it for kids and you're going, I don't want this to be boring. This is like a really healthy meal, but one that's fun, that you actually want to order off the menu, because I'm writing it for the kids, not for their parents. I'm writing it for the children because they're the ones that I want to read and think about it and explore different concepts and come up with their own solutions sometimes.
You say very early on that you struggled with certain things, that you were insecure and you were frightened of being different. How did you overcome those things, if indeed you still have? I don't know. I mean, some of these things stay with us way into adulthood, don't they?
Yeah, I think I'm much more comfortable now with being different. I've become accustomed to it, and I think the more I can spread a feeling of pride, certainly my sexuality, for example, would have been something 20 or 30 years ago that you'd have been expected to feel ashamed about and therefore hide and be conditioned to hide. And I'm really keen to make sure people are aware that you don't have to be ashamed. And that I'm saying that not only to straight people, I'm actually saying that to LGBT people, because I think quite often we can carry our own shame with us. And I wanted to not, you find a way of not doing that. And it helps when you're in a really happy long-term relationship. Don't get me wrong, it does help. It means, you can be very, very smug about it all, trying not to be smug, but, just go, look, I'm really happy. I am so happy in my life. Yes. And not sort of woe is me and here are all the problems. But I think also sport helped me at school, because through sport I could be a position on the pitch rather than Claire, I played lacrosse at school, which is a particularly violent form of head-height hockey. You are what you are in the team, and people will pass you the ball and you will pass the ball to your teammate because it's what's best for the game. So you can sort of remove the emotion, and you then are having a shared experience as a team that connects you as friends. And my school friends, there's a group of 10 or 12 of us, and most of us played a sport together, and that's why we're friends. And then we've got a couple of others who are violently anti-sport and just make us all laugh. Obviously we're still friends, and we're still, just like, God, you still keep banging on about sport.
So why selfish? In what ways do you think you were selfish?
As a child,
yeah.
I think I was very self-centered. So and I think this is true of a lot of us. If we're really honest, how hard, it's so hard sometimes to just turn your focus outwards and not be thinking, how do I look in this situation? What's the impact on me here? What are they thinking of me? Classic. What do they think of me?
Yeah.
Well, why is that more relevant than what do you think? And how can you help them? How can you influence this situation in a positive way? So I think that's something I have worked on. Do you know, the build-up to London in 2012 is a really good example, and I talk about this in the book. When, in the build-up to 2012, the BBC made their, selections for their lead presenters for it, and I wasn't one of them, and I was pretty knocked sideways by that, because I was thinking, well, what did I do wrong? I was pretty much one of the, more senior ones at the last sort of 4 or 5 major events. What have I done wrong? What And I got really kind of down about it. And then I thought, what are you thinking? This is London 2012. This is not about you. This is not about your position and whether you're going to be the lead presenter or not. Just go and do the event. Talk about the event. Make people feel they're at the event. Really throw yourself into it. Immerse yourself into it. And actually, it worked. It was a light bulb moment for me as a sports broadcaster. And most people think I was one of the leading presenters of London 2012. I was the reporter at the swimming, and then the reporter at the women's boxing, and the reporter at the, I had a great time because I went to so many different events, the dressage, the show jumping, the modern pentathlon, the open water swimming. I had a ball, but I had to tell my brain to stop worrying about, where you are in the pecking order. Just get on with the greatest event in our lifetime anyway.
You had quite an extraordinary childhood, didn't you? I mean, that's what makes this book so interesting as well, because, you ask of the reader to think in different ways, but you clearly had a very interesting... I mean, look, it's not every child that comes home, smells sausages, comes in expecting breakfast, and the Queen is sitting there.
Well, that wasn't every morning.
But it happened. I mean, let's face it, for most people that didn't happen, right? So...
Well, okay, yes, once in a while. And my father, the reason for that was my father was a racehorse trainer. My brother now is, and my brother now trains for the Queen. My father did, my uncle did. I mean, that is a very rare and extraordinary privilege.
How do you act like that? I mean, what do you do? Well, you curtsy, presumably.
No, in that instance, I quite often would forget to curtsy, and obviously I would now in any situation with a member of the royal family. But classic sort of dad forgot to tell us, and you come running in, and suddenly, wow, what am I meant to do? But generally speaking, and this is true, and actually, I'm working on the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh on Saturday for BBC Radio. As one of the commentators, and with various members of the royal family, because of their connection to horses or equestrian sports or dogs, it has been much easier to have a conversation than it might have been.
Right.
And
that's a bridge, isn't it? Immediately a bridge.
Absolutely, and I think that's so important. I mean, I'm up in Leeds at the moment. So I'm actually at the Rugby League, which is where I'm talking to you from, and I've been walking this morning with Kay Mellor in Harewood Estate for ramblings, and Kay Mellor, the writer of The Syndicate and Band of Gold and Playing the Field. And everyone we walked past had a dog. So we're stopping, we're talking to the dogs, and I'm chatting away to them, and Kay's talking to them. And you've got this feeling of a network of friends because you're in a situation where you can have that conversation through the dog. Sport is like that. You know, I can talk to anyone about sport, and that is a great leveler. And it's why I believe that it's so much more powerful than just results on the pitch. I think it's so much more than that. Rugby league's a very good example of a sport that's so deeply rooted in its community for all the clubs. A really strong binding force.
I mean, clearly most people won't get a chance to have a conversation with someone from the royal family. When I have had one, I was always amazed by, it's always been Prince Charles, but amazed about just how eclectic the conversations can be, almost about anything.
And also the homework they'll have done.
Yes.
Any one of them, the event they're at, and they'll know something about you, and you think how many people, Prince Charles, for example, how many people he's met in so many different situations.
Yeah. Well, the Duke of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Situations. It would be remiss of me not to ask if you had ever met him before and had a conversation.
Yeah, and I interviewed him actually for the BBC cover of the Queen's Birthday Parade, and
oh yes,
the
90th. Yes, of course you did.
The Grenadier Guards were trooping the colour in 2010, and Hugh Edwards was meant to do the interview, but you will remember 2010 was the year of the hung Parliament. The general election that was so close. So Hugh was based at number 10 Downing Street, waiting for David Cameron to announce what was going to happen. And I got drafted in at the last minute to do the interview with the Duke of Edinburgh. And I think it's quite a good thing that I didn't know until literally the night before that I was doing it, because I would have got myself in a state. And obviously questions have to be cleared and all of that. But it was extraordinary because, I mean, very punctual, very organised, knew exactly what was going on, knew why I'd been drafted in, but said to me straight away, he said, now, obviously Prince Philip was a very keen polo player. And my grandfather, my father's father, was a 10-goal polo player. Now, that's the best you can be. There hasn't been a 10-goal polo player in this country
so that's the Lionel Messi of polo, essentially.
Exactly that. And he said to me straight away, he said, Gerald Balding, was he your grandfather? I said, yes, he was, sir. And he said, he was my hero. And I said, oh, well, I never met him, and I never saw him play polo. So he told me about him, and it was really extraordinary. I was like, wow. So anyway, and then we started the interview.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What a connection. What ultimately do you want young people to take from this book? I mean, obviously it's called Fall Off, Get Back On, Keep Going, so that's clear. But obviously there's nuance throughout every page of this book. What do you think is most important?
I think to know that when you try and achieve things in life, you are going to make mistakes, you're going to have setbacks. It doesn't need to be the end. You can reinvent yourself, you can try again, you can try other things that every successful person you ever look at will have had, their Thomas Edison failures, or Roger Federer. I use an example actually of in the patience chapter, because everybody thinks Roger Federer, wonderful, graceful player, must never have struggled with patience. He was really difficult as a teenager and would throw temper tantrums and smash rackets, and you just can't imagine it now. And I like to take examples like that where you go, did you know this? And to show that it is possible to come through tough times. That's what I would like. Because I do think it particularly now, and not just with what kids have been through, but actually the assimilation back to supposedly normal life. I think for a lot of kids that's quite challenging. So finding ways of connecting with other people and knowing that you will have friends and you will have support and you will actually be able to come through pretty much anything if you've got the right attitude and the right people and the right support, and if you know when to ask for help as well. I think that's quite important.
I mean, you'll be aware, of course, of the phrase of, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And there are a couple of sections in this book where you discuss that, about standing up for something that you believe in. What do you think you stand for? Or what do you know you stand for?
Gosh, I know what I believe in. I don't know whether that means I can claim to stand for it, because by saying stand for it, you meant to have public recognition for that. So that I can't.
Well, it's also difficult in a BBC context to say certain things that you stand for, isn't it, really, as well? As you and I both well know.
I certainly stand for equality of opportunity, and I mean that in terms of whether that's gender or race or religion or background. And I want to help create more opportunity, and that's something that I'm not in a position necessarily to do yet, but I would like to be able to do in the next sort of 10 or 20 years. You want to understand your own, what you've been able to do, and try and help more people or other people have this, have the chance to work in an industry that is exciting and challenging and stimulating, or just to understand what makes them happy and to enjoy those things in life. And that doesn't always, actually, Kay Mellor and I were talking about this morning, because obviously the syndicate is all about winning the lottery and the various series and the impact of that. And she said, I realised, she's done a lot of research into it, she said you could win 29 million and be absolutely miserable within a year. And she said so many people that she's talked to who have won big money have fallen out as a family, or have become addicted to gambling or drugs or whatever it is. That is not the key. And really achieving something that you're proud of, that you find exciting and motivating as a career, I think is so much more important. But that's easier to say when you're not struggling to pay the bills. It's much harder to think when you are. So
indeed. It's going to be a strange summer of sport, but at least we're going to get some sport, aren't we? I mean, that's a good thing, aren't we? So there will be the Euros, there will be Wimbledon, there will be an Olympics. So what are you looking forward to the most?
There will be a Paralympics as well.
And a Paralympics as well, of course, yes.
And the Rugby League World Cup, which is being staged here in Great Britain, and is men's, women's and wheelchair, all in the same tournament. First time ever that's happened. Men's and women's final on the same day at Old Trafford. That's never happened before. So I'm really excited about that. And I won't be presenting that, but I will be very heavily involved because I'm president of the RFL. But the Olympics and Paralympics, I'm so pleased. I'm so relieved that it looks like they are, going to happen, because you suddenly start to worry and think, oh, don't throw us another thing. But yeah, that'll be great. And Wimbledon, and I do Eastbourne actually the week before Wimbledon, and that'll be the first event or the first week that we're allowed to have full crowds again. So that'll be exciting. Wow. Just to get that buzz, just to get that cheer, because it's sure. It is all about that. It's as well as. People love sport because it gives them a buzz, but if you can't, it's quite difficult to forcefully create the buzz. Some events, I think it matters less. I think, in some sports you don't need to hear cheering, but in others it really helps.
The fake crowd noise at football matches does my head in, I've got to say. When you're seeing empty things and then you hear these oohs and ahs, it's almost like panto. You're listening to it when I'm watching the TV.
I have to say, though, I do admire the skill of the sound operator who's picking the right thing. I'm sort of obsessed with that now.
That's very true. That is very true. Claire, thank you so much for taking time out to hang out with us today. Claire Balding's book, Fall Off, Get Back On, Keep Going, 10 Ways to Be at the Top of Your Game, is perfect for your kids. All right, brilliant, Claire Balding there. Now, though, let's, at 31 minutes past 2, get the headlines with James Wickham.
Listen on BBC Sounds. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Thanks, Nahal. Denmark has announced it's stopping the use of the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine entirely due to a possible link to very rare blood clots. It's the first country in Europe to take such action after a number raised concerns. Health officials in the UK insist the jab is safe, although the medicines regulator has recommended that adults under 30 should be offered an alternative if possible. Travel industry leaders have warned that £60 is still too much for a coronavirus PCR test after one of the UK's leading providers reduced its price. Under plans to restart foreign travel from England next month, even passengers from the safest green list countries will have to test negative when they return using a PCR swab. Boris Johnson has admitted it's not clear whether the boundaries between Whitehall and business have been properly understood in the growing row surrounding David Cameron and lobbying. Labour wants the government to hold a full parliamentary inquiry into lobbying, describing it as a broken system. And Egypt will impound the giant container ship that blocked the Suez Canal last month until its Japanese owner pays $900 million. That's just over £650 million in compensation. One of the Ever Givens Insurers UK club said the Suez Canal Authority had rejected its offer to settle the claim. That's the news on 5 Live. Delith has the sport.
Thank you, James. Mikel Arteta says he's not making any plans for Arsenal not to be in Europe next season. Their best route into qualifying looks to be by winning the Europa League, as their Premier League form has suffered of late. Arteta, though, is waiting on the fitness of captain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Martin Odegaard ahead of tomorrow's Europa League quarter-final second leg against Slavia Prague. It's evenly poised at 1-1. Goalkeeper Bernd Leno says the prospect of Arsenal not playing European football next season doesn't bear thinking about.
When you think about the future without Arsenal in European competition, it doesn't feel right, and our job is to don't come true, because Arsenal belongs to Europe, and that's our target, that's our job.
Chris Wilder has commented for the first time since he left his role as Sheffield United manager last month. He says he lived the dream of every Blades fan, and I hope every one of them understands that I tried to represent them correctly in giving them their club back. Wilder says he's reflecting before deciding on what's next. Meanwhile, Sheffield United say captain Billy Sharp has undergone successful thigh surgery, but he'll miss the rest of the season. Now, with exactly 100 days to go until the start of the Olympic Games, British Olympic Association chairman Sir Hugh Robertson says he's as confident as he can possibly be that the event will go ahead. He also says he hopes every British athlete will be vaccinated before they go to Japan.
The speed and success of the rollout is our greatest ally here, and we would clearly want to get everybody in the party vaccinated before we go. So we're watching those figures very carefully. The government is saying that all adults will be vaccinated by the end of July, so we're reasonably confident. But as I say, we're watching it very carefully.
Women's Six Nations organisers have confirmed to the BBC that the Irish government has given permission for France's women's team to enter the country under elite sport status so they can play Saturday's pool match with Ireland at Donnybrook. There had been rumours the game would be moved to Belfast. France is on the Irish travel red list from tomorrow. British number one Dan Evans is through to the third round of the Monte Carlo Masters after beating Hubert Hurkacz of Poland 6-4, 6-1. He'll now play Novak Djokovic, who beat Yannick Sinner in his first match since winning the Australian Open. And the Royal Challengers Bangalore will look to make it 2 wins from 2 in this season's IPL when they take on Sunrisers Hyderabad this afternoon. Henry Moran will be watching.
We've just had the toss. It's been won by Sunrisers Hyderabad. They've elected to field first. RCB, meanwhile, featuring Virat Kohli and AB de Villiers, looking to back up that excellent win against the champions Mumbai Indians in the first game of the tournament. In their way, the Hyderabad side with England's Johnny Bairstow, who scored a blistering half-century in a good game against Kolkata Knight Riders last time out. Should be an excellent match. As I say, just had the toss. Hyderabad have won it and will field first.
Thanks, HM. Coverage gets underway on Sports Extra from 5 to 3. That's the latest from BBC Sports.
On BBC Two.
Let the digger see the gold.
Join me, Catherine Ryan, in the search for Britain's next big jewellery star.
It's a beautiful piece.
I think it's worked.
These people are talented.
Up-and-coming designers will be judged by two of the world's most famous jewellery makers.
I want to find the new fearless jeweller of our generation. Jewellery's so tense.
If I don't like something, it will be very apparent.
Who will truly shine?
The fortune's going to give it a nice texture and shimmer.
All That Glitters starts Tuesday night at 8 on BBC Two and iPlayer.
The voice of the UK. This is 5 Live.
Nahal Arthanaika. Listen live on digital, online, smart speaker, or the BBC Sounds app.
And a very good afternoon to you. Now, my documentary of the week is not an easy watch by any stretch of the imagination, but it is an incredibly powerful and emotional one. Sudden Death, My Sister's Silent Killer, follows Patrick, as he looks into the death of his 19-year-old sister Lauren from SADS, which is Sudden Adult Death Syndrome. The documentary is available now on BBC iPlayer, but also airs tonight on BBC One at 10:45 p.m. Now here's a clip of Patrick talking to Tash, who he met at a therapy group.
Like, do you chat to your parents?
About, like, the day that Lauren passed? Not really. I feel like because it is so tough to talk about.
And, like, maybe that's, like, for me, talking to my friends is kind of a practice run for talking to my parents. But, like, I also understand that it's different being a 17-year-old girl versus a 17-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Like, I get that. I mean, I've cried in front of all my best mates multiple times. How many times have you cried in front of your best mates?
Not very often, you know what I mean?
It's just not something you do after a football match, right?
No. I guess, yeah. I do feel like it's almost easier talking to you. You've kind of been in my shoes, so to speak. It would be nice to, at some point, be able to sort of have a conversation about this, like, about Lauren passing and stuff like that. But when I try and talk about it, I can't. So I feel like I'm just not ready to.
Yeah.
And I'm very pleased to say that Patrick joins us now to talk about the documentary, and also Katie Frampton, who's an inherited cardiac conditions nurse specialist at St George's Hospital, who also features in the documentary. Patrick and Katie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Patrick, how has this documentary helped you to process what has happened? Has it been a help?
It's kind of helped me understand what's actually happened. Just like helped me understand that it's not just happened to my family, it's happened to...
Patrick, sorry to interrupt you, but your voice keeps going up and down. I obviously want people listening to hear every word that you have to say. So I'll go to Katie and we'll try and get a clearer line for you while I'm doing that. My apologies for that. Katie, tell us about SADS, Sudden Adult Death Syndrome. How common is it?
So we don't really know the exact figures. We do know that it's more common than we think, and Professor Mary Shepherd talks very openly that there's many deaths that are attributed to other things such as drowning and car accidents who could potentially be SADS. What SADS means is that we simply can't find a cause of death, and that the heart is entirely normal. And what we do know is that in 50% of cases where we screen family members, we find an inherited cardiac condition in another family member, which we believe to be the cause of death for that young person.
So I can imagine that the screening process is done after a tragic event like this has happened, because of course the NHS doesn't have the time or the capacity to screen everyone in the country, do they, to see whether this is a potential. So it's only ever done after something tragic has happened.
It is currently. It's a very complex issue because screening is not simple, as Patrick well knows, and as you see in the documentary, there's a large number of tests that we have to do when something like this has happened. And what we want to raise awareness of is that this condition does exist, it is out there, and to reach out to the families who this has happened to, and to give them a voice, because previously, you know, it's kind of unfathomable to understand how a young, fit, healthy person can just die suddenly. And we are doing the very best we can to look into why these happen and the genetic basis of the condition, to try and in the future hopefully develop screening tools and genetic evaluation to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future.
I believe we have Patrick now on a clearer line, so my apologies for that, Patrick.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, I'd just like to ask you the same question again, really, about how being part of this documentary, in fact being very centre of this documentary, helped you to deal with Lauren's passing?
I think mainly it helped me understand what had happened to Lauren. So in that sense, it helped me process it better. And I just think that without doing this, I might not have learned fully what SADS was. And then it's hard to explain how it's helped, but it has helped me be able to talk more about it and just help me process what happened in general to Lauren.
Because